What would you do if you realized your nation's naval survival rested on tiny fiberglass boats designed to swarm like hornets? Imagine the moment your commanders decided to abandon stealth and gather their entire force in one massive visible cluster. This isn't a training exercise. It is a catastrophic military blunder that the mainstream media is completely ignoring. Right now, in the Strait of Hormuz, a tactical nightmare is unfolding that will rewrite the rules of maritime warfare. Before we dive into the classified details of this 2026 standoff, you need to understand the high-stakes strategy involved. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on global flashpoints, hit subscribe for World Decoded and like this video now. To understand why Iran would gamble its power on one throw of the dice, we must look at the 2026 wreckage. By that spring, the Revolutionary Guard Navy had already watched 90% of its conventional surface fleet disappear into the deep. Over 160 traditional warships were gone, forcing a radical pivot to the desperate Mosquito Fleet doctrine. This strategy relied on fast attack craft hiding in rocky coves to ambush the world's most powerful navy. In May 2026, the doctrine of dispersal was suddenly discarded for a high-stakes display of regional vanity. Near the strategic choke points of Keshem and Larak Islands, the IRGCN massed a force of 130 boats. These 75-foot vessels, built from reinforced fiberglass, are capable of screaming across the water at 60 knots. Each craft is a floating arsenal packed with 107-meter multiple rocket launchers and 23-meter autocannons to shred close-range targets. But the real threat, the one that keeps the Pentagon awake, is the C-802 Nor anti-ship cruise missile. These sea-skimming monsters carry a 350-pound warhead and fly just feet above the waves to bypass radar detection. Before we reveal the fatal flaw in this missile plan, comment the word storm below to help the algorithm share this. The math was simple. Overwhelm American Aegis destroyers with numbers until their defensive magazines finally ran completely dry. Yet, in a move that defied every principle of asymmetric warfare, Iran chose this moment to broadcast their exact position. By releasing drone imagery of the swarm, the IRGC handed CENTCOM the precise targeting coordinates for their entire remaining capability. It was a shift from ambiguity to display, effectively painting a bullseye on the last line of Iranian naval defense. Stop and think about what that means. They sacrificed the element of surprise for a domestic propaganda victory. While state media hailed the Great Swarm as invincible, American intelligence was already feeding those coordinates into a deadly network. This was no longer hide and seek. It had become a pre-mapped execution list for the world's most advanced sensing systems. Let that sink in. The very technology meant to show strength was actually the instrument of their own tactical exposure. As the sun rose over the strait, the 130-boat swarm sat like sitting ducks, unaware the kill chain was locking. The IRGC thought they were setting a trap, but they were actually sailing straight into a mathematical meat grinder. The real story wasn't the size of the fleet, but the silent activation of a tiered response rendering fiberglass obsolete. The stage was set for a confrontation testing every piece of hardware, from the F-35 to the legendary A-10 Warthog. But how does a single-carrier strike group manage 130 separate targets moving at 70 miles per hour? The answer lies in a strategy so precise it breaks saturation math, starting with a pulse from the quarterback in the sky. This was the moment the world's most dangerous choke point became a laboratory for the future of high-intensity naval destruction. The Americans weren't just watching. They were dividing the ocean into kill zones where no boat could find a hiding place. This architecture of absolute control begins 25,000 feet above the waves with the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, the literal quarterback of the modern kill chain. Its AN/APY-9 radar doesn't just scan the surface. It builds a digital graveyard by tracking objects across a massive 400-mile radius. The moment an Iranian boat leaves its coastal coop, it's already been tagged, numbered, and uploaded to a shared reality for every pilot to see. This is where Link 16 changes the game, pushing that high-definition radar picture instantly to every F-35C and Aegis destroyer in the theater. Before we go any further, if you want to understand how these technologies reshape the map, subscribe to Marching World Decoded, and like this video right now. We have to address the saturation math Iran relied on, the idea that enough small targets can physically overwhelm the limited firing rate of a single ship. But the Americans responded with sector division, a cold mathematical counter that slices the 130-boat swarm into manageable and isolated kill zones. Each aircraft is assigned a specific geographic box, turning a chaotic naval wave into a sequence of 10 or 12 individual targets per pilot. The F-35C Lightning II acts as a forward sensor node, using its high-resolution radar to separate fiberglass hulls from commercial clutter in the dense strait. It's a level of tactical clarity that makes the high-speed Mosquito fleet look like sitting ducks in a wide-open gallery. Then come the cleaners, starting with the A-10 Warthog and its legendary GAU-8 Avenger 30mm cannon. Against 75-foot boats made of thin fiberglass or aluminum, these high-velocity rounds don't just puncture the hull, they disintegrate the entire target on impact. If a boat tries to maneuver at 60 knots, the AH-64 Apache's M230 chain gun follows every turn, slaved directly to the pilot's helmet. Every erratic zig and zag is met with a stream of 30mm fire that the Iranian crews simply cannot outrun or evade in close quarters. Stop what you're doing and comment the word quarterback down below to let me know you're seeing the full picture of this high-stakes chess match. In May 2026, Iran made a fatal mistake by publicizing drone imagery of their coordinated boat formations near the strategic Keshem and Larak Islands. By showing off their numbers for a domestic propaganda win, they inadvertently handed CENTCOM the exact coordinates for their entire remaining strike capability. It was a total surrender of their only true tactical advantage, the ambiguity and concealment offered by the swarm. These boats carry C-802 sea-skimming missiles with 350-pound warheads, capable of slipping through a destroyer's phalanx defenses if they get within range, but they never got the chance to launch because they were being hunted from 3 different dimensions by a network that never blinks. The U.S. military turned the Strait of Hormuz into a digital grid where every movement was a data point in a script of destruction. This wasn't just a military exercise, it was the final desperate gasp of a naval doctrine outpaced by the technology in the sky. While the world watched for a golden shot against a carrier, a much darker catastrophe was unfolding inside the Iranian borders. The swarm wasn't just a weapon, it was a distraction from a regime that was hemorrhaging money while its people were cut off from the world. To truly understand why the IRGC would sacrifice its last boats, we have to look behind the digital iron curtain they dropped over their citizens. The focus is shifting from the blue waters of the Gulf to the silent streets of Tehran, where a different war was being lost. While the world watched the waves of the Persian Gulf, the Islamic Republic was busy strangling its own infrastructure to prevent a total domestic collapse. Starting in January 2026, the regime initiated a record-breaking 88-day nationwide internet blackout to silence mounting dissent. This was not just a digital silence, it was a self-inflicted economic wound that threatened the very stability of the nation. Every 24 hours, the digital lights stayed dark, the Iranian economy hemorrhaged a staggering $35.7 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. Over nearly 3 months of total isolation, the Iranian stock exchange plummeted by 450,000 points as the nation's financial heart simply stopped beating. To the IRGC, this was the unavoidable price of regime survival. While the general population was cut off from the global community, the elite introduced a privileged 2-tiered system they called pro-internet. This allowed the loyalist inner circle to maintain their grip on power while the public was plunged into a pre-digital era. They were desperate to control the narrative as Starlink terminals began flooding the black market. Under the banner of Project Freedom Plus, these satellite dishes became the only thing piercing the regime's digital iron curtain. This is the part that most mainstream coverage gets completely wrong. The massing of 130 fast attack craft near Keshem Island was not a prelude to a grand invasion of global energy markets. It was a high-stakes tactical performance designed for a domestic audience that was beginning to see through the regime's facade. The IRGC needed a public show of strength to distract from the reality that they were rapidly running out of money and control. Before we reveal the final outcome of this naval sacrifice, stop and think about what this means. If you want to understand the secret moves that keep the world's most powerful generals awake at night, hit subscribe right now. We need you to join this community of deep thinkers who value real analysis. Like the video right now to signal to the algorithm that you are done with shallow headlines. Now, let's look at the tactical reality the media chose to ignore during the standoff. Those 130 boats were packed with 107 multiple rocket launchers and C-802 anti-ship cruise missiles. On paper, it looks like a swarm nightmare that could overwhelm any modern navy. But for a U.S. Navy E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, those boats were not a surprise. They were just dots on a radar screen waiting to be mathematically deleted from the theater. CENTCOM's kill chain was already active, with Link 16 pushing every coordinate to F-35Cs and Aegis destroyers. The math of saturation only works if your enemy cannot see you coming. To prove you are following the strategic shifts we are discussing today, I want you to drop a comment right now. Type the word command to show the algorithm we are paying attention. The 60-day nuclear negotiation window was closing fast, and Tehran was desperate for any form of leverage. By grouping their remaining strike capability in one place, they were not preparing to win. They were offering the Mosquito fleet as a sacrificial lamb to the gods of propaganda. A single golden shot from a sea-skimming C-802 could have ignited a regional firestorm. But the U.S. military did not play into their hands. Instead of a direct escalation, they used sector division to break the 130-boat swarm into manageable targets for A-10 Warthogs. Imagine the GAU-8 Avenger cannon tearing through a fiberglass hull at 3,900 rounds per minute. That is the violent reality of a mosquito meeting a high-tech meat grinder. The IRGC knew those boats would not survive more than an hour of actual combat against the kill chain. They traded their final naval assets for a victory they could broadcast to their suffering people. This was never about the Strait of Hormuz. It was about the survival of a regime that had lost its streets. They chose to burn their fleet rather than lose their throne. When an empire begins sacrificing its own defense for the sake of its image, the end is close. Does a nation truly exist if its only strength is a theater of war? We will be here to decode the next move before the world even realizes the game has changed. Subscribe, so you never miss an analysis that matters in this dangerous age. Thank you for watching.